Kuzuk Zampula. And Jule, as we greet in Ladakh. I'm so happy to be reconnecting to one of my favorite places in the world. In fact, the other side of our mountain range, Ladakh is on the west and Bhutan on the extreme east. I don't know if you there talk about it, but Bhutan, they say, came from the Sanskrit word Bhot Ant, where Bhot is the general Himalayan Tibetan culture and greater Tibetan culture. So Bhot Ant is the end of this greater culture. And I think we are the other side, so the Arambha of the culture. So we are two sides of the same coin, two ends of the same range, and share a lot. And I'm happy to be reconnecting. I've been coming to your beautiful land for many years, since the 90s. And here, looking forward to physically also visit, though virtually these days is better. I'm happy that there are so many school principals and education enthusiasts. It's the right time for us to rethink, reimagine, reinvent education. I think the pandemic and all that it has entailed has kicked us, shaken us to rethink, reimagine. For me, even though it is a sad event, but educationally speaking, it is something I have been waiting for, a big shake in the system. So let me take you on a little journey of what I think of education and how it should be, and few examples from our part of the world in the mountains of Ladakh of what I am going to share with you, and invite you to join a little journey of mine. So the problem, I think, with current education, modern or Western education, of which a copy we have received, not really the original, we have a copy which is hardly legible. So even the original, if you look at what the Europeans or the British used to call or think of education, was 3 R's. It was about the 3 R's, meaning reading, writing, and arithmetic. Doesn't make sense, and you can see that in how they think that writing and arithmetic even start with R. So there you go with the soundness of this idea. But the problem I find when it comes to our culture and our environment is that reading, writing, arithmetic is all about the intellectual part of our being, the head part. It's just an intellectual exercise, not more holistic, to include us in a more wholesome way. So when you think of education as just reading, writing, and arithmetics, no wonder we take it as something that can be done with textbooks and school classrooms and blackboards, whereas learning should be much more than this. They added a little bit of sciences and social sciences and geography and so on, but still it remains very much an exercise of the head alone. So therefore, in Ladakh, from the 90s, we have been trying to advocate that education should be more than just about head. And we would say we should recoin this to include more by saying that it should be about 3 H's rather than 3 R's, where the H's are a bright head. Surely, as the Western concept goes, a bright head, definitely, and our children should be as good as any around the world in mathematics, physics, biology, all the sciences and languages and so on. But that alone will not make them good people who contribute to the well-being of this planet. This alone can make them, arrogant monsters who can speak a lot but do very little. So therefore, beyond the bright head, we should have the second edge of skilled hands. Skilled hands whereby the children who have bright heads also know how to apply the sciences and the mathematics and all in life to solve problems, so that they become problem solvers. Therefore, the hands are also equally important as the head alone. Right now, most of our schools are struggling to deal with just the head part, and only some good schools, and strangely, again, some Western school systems like IB, International Baccalaureate, or Cambridge, they say have some elements of activities and experiential learning. Well, I think India and around our cultures in Bhutan and India, we have always considered education to be more than just, intellectual exercise, to be more experiential. You must know from Buddhism, we talk of Thosam Gom Sum, Thus Pesherap, Sam Pesherap, and Gom Pesherap. I'm sure you learn about these there as we do here. In Sanskrit or Pali, the Buddha had taught Panya or Pragya, which is wisdom, of three kinds. The first being Shrutmay Pragya, heard wisdom, heard knowledge, heard jnana or shirap. Thospe shirap, meaning that the wisdom that you acquire through your ears, maybe through your eyes when you read, but it stays in the head and doesn't go beyond. It's just like Buddha gave an example, saying that it's like a line drawn on water. As you draw, it gets deleted. So that's what Thuspe Sherap is. Shrutmai Pragya. Heard wisdom is like lines drawn on water. Therefore, the second, it says, is Sampesharap. Sampesharap is like reflection. What we today call reflection, critical thinking, creative thinking, reflective thinking, these come under Sampa, Thuspa, Sampa. And then finally, Sampa also is like not stable, not sustainable. The example given was, it's like drawing lines on sand. It may last for a few days, but then it's gone, lines on sand. But the final and the better and the more permanent one was Gompeshera, the experiential, where you become that, you experience that. That was called the Bhavanamay Pragya or Panya, which is when you fully experience it. Gompe Sherap, as we say here. Pronunciations may differ, but I'm sure you know Thuspa, Sampa, Gompa, these three. So this we have known for millennia, and yet we have made our education into just Thuspe Sherap, or heard wisdom, or read wisdom, just read and heard, which stays at the surface of our intellect and not deeper. So the Bhavanamaya Pragya or experiential wisdom, the example was given, a line drawn on rocks that lasts for thousands of years. So until we have for our children something they can experience, it will be just like lines on water, which are drawn now and gone tomorrow. That's how our education, our examinations have become when we follow this kind. So experiential education that today has become somewhat fashionable is not something new. It has been there since Buddha's time when he said Bhavanamai Pragya or Zgompe Sherap. It was experiential wisdom. Of course, it takes you beyond the worldly progress and development to enlightenment in his vision and scheme of things. We are today making most of worldly material objects when we talk of education. So therefore, just the head alone is not enough. You have to develop skilled hands, and for that you have to have experiential education, is what we have been saying. But then skilled hands and bright head is not enough to make a good human being, because all the antisocial elements, criminals, all have these two. They're very bright. No criminal can be an idiot. Criminals are very, very, very bright. See, they have a bright head and they have a skilled hands with which they can rob a bank or pick your pocket in a way that you don't even know. So they have skilled hands, they have bright head. What makes a big difference is the third edge, which is the heart part, the kind heart. I hope you are able to hear me. Is it okay? Yes. Network? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So therefore, we have been saying that it has to include a kind heart also, the third edge after head and hands, the heart part. Until you have the heart in the right place, head and hands can be misused. But if we groom people with kind, compassionate hearts, then they can never put it to misuse. It will always be for human good, and not just human good of the all living beings. And therefore, education has to be, we always say, holistic, to include all the three aspects of a being. However, this was never understood, and all the schools, all the buildings, all the teachers, and all the facilities were used only for development of the head alone. And therefore, we see a lot of problems in the world: big egos, little empathy, and lot of conflicts. This is what has been the hallmark of the past century of education. And therefore, we need to change it. And I would say, thanks to COVID, this could be possible. This could be possible because before COVID, we used to think schools could just do lectures, talks, chalk and talk, But the pandemic has shown that part of education, the lecturing part, the concept building, can be better done through internet in the digital realm. So online has become the norm. It forced us to explore online. And today we see that better than the best lectures of our teachers in our school are available on YouTube, on various platforms on internet. If it is about lectures on concept, our teachers may not be the best expressive communicators, and better ones are available on videos, and you can replay them to no end till you understand. So online exceeds what schools and teachers can do in classrooms in terms of lectures, only lectures and concepts. In concept building, I think I used to say this before the pandemic in the schools when I would go on education conferences, that we need not make these great facilities called schools into lecturing places with captive teachers and students who can only listen to each other and have no other choices. We could outsource that to the internet, the digital world. You have so many great lectures from around the world, the best of them, illustrious teachers and scientists making beautiful videos with 3D illustration and everything. Our teachers may never be able to compete them in lecturing. So why not outsource it to that? Now, pandemic has forced us to do that. Students, I think, are learning more from lectures around the world on all concepts than, of course, from their old teachers. So does that mean that schools and teachers have no role? Actually, I think no. This is where the real role of schools and teachers begin. It doesn't end, it actually begins. Till now, we were really not playing the role that we could have and should have. We were just doing intellectual exercise and games. We were not doing education. So now, once we have been forced to understand by the pandemic that much can happen online from around the world, now when the pandemic ends, I want to believe that schools change forever. Schools change forever and definitely do not go back to the same old chalk and talk that we used to do before the pandemic. What I would like to see in schools around the world, and this I used to say before the pandemic, but nobody took me seriously, hope that some people take me seriously now that it is possible, and maybe a country like Bhutan can lead this kind of concept. The concept is that let's outsource all concept building lectures to the internet and all kinds of video lectures that are available. In fact, schools could recommend them best of such lectures rather than attempting that. If we can, good. We can have a library of such concept building lectures in video, in 3D illustration. If not, we can recommend links to all the best in the world. Now, then what do schools do? Schools do what internet can never do. Schools, therefore, take up the responsibility that they never did. Schools can be a place where it is like a live laboratory of application. Application of the concepts that are in the books was completely missing till now. Now that concept building lectures are outsourced to the digital world, schools could become this meeting place where you physically meet and therefore make the most of what could be done only when you physically meet. Not lectures, they can be done without physically meeting, but what you would need schools for is application of projects to apply various principles in science, in maths, in social sciences, and so on. Work with others in teams, in groups, collaborate. So to hone the qualities, skills, human skills of collaborating with others, solving problems of society through applications of what you learned in your theory lecture classes. This was almost not happening at all. So now schools could specialize in this part, application part, so that teachers could facilitate and start where the lectures end, not start with lectures, but start where lectures end. They are the facilitators of application. And therefore, if it is, evaporative cooling, then the school is where the groups of project teams make evaporative cooling systems to keep milk fresh in hot plains, or to keep your house warm, or to keep other, solar heating or chapter on heat to make your houses warm in cold places. These are what the school could do. So therefore, the head part of lectures could be outsourced to the digital world. The hands part of application could be specialized by the schools, and the heart part, the kind heart part Of course, schools should coordinate and facilitate, but I think best place for development of the kind heart is society, is family. Of course, starting with school, and schools can do a lot by facilitating that learning so that our children tomorrow are a step better than our ancestors, even in this field of the kindness. On the other hand, normally we see they are very bright, but they are not kind as our uneducated grandparents. So we could make it into a world where each generation is better, not just in head than the previous generation, but also in skills of the hands and kindness of the heart. So that's the principle that I have been advocating, the innovation that we need to bring in our school systems so that our education system doesn't remain just intellectual, but has experiential, hands-on, engaging learning, and above all, development of a kind heart to make good human beings for a happy planet. Now, at this point, I'll take you through a little journey of some examples from Ladakh, where I have been working on various schools and education systems to illustrate what I'm saying and how it could be done. So I would at this point request you to allow me to share my screen. If we go to Ladakh for a while. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that's Ladakh on the map, top north of India. You all are in the Himalayas, but we are across the Himalayas or trans-Himalayas. So the mighty big Himalayas becomes a barrier for even the monsoon clouds, which cannot cross easily. And therefore, we are a trans-Himalayan mountain desert. Most of Bhutan is lush green Himalayas. You also have some trans-Himalayan parts. So ours is more like that. As you can see here, Ladakh is almost like another planet, with temperatures swinging from plus 35 to minus 35, as close an experience as it can get to outer space with the kind of, temperature fluctuations that you can see on the Earth. Here you can see closer. What makes it really like planet Earth is these little villages that are the green patches you see. So green is very scarce in Ladakh, and it's all man-made. You all can boast of great forests in Bhutan. We have no forests and we have no deforestation because we have no forests to deforest. We have only stories of afforestation. So the greens that you see are all man-made. Every little tree is planted by human beings. So our ancestors were very ingenious in using glacial melt waters to irrigate patches of desert and cultivate apples and apricots and grapes and pears and cabbages, cauliflowers, broccoli and peas and barley and wheat and so on in this total desert. It's rather cold, almost punishingly cold, can get it to minus 25, 35, as I said. So we become a minority, a tiny minority in the vast tropical country that India is. So we become a tiny minority, not just ethnic and linguistic, but also technological. As you can see below, just to run a tap becomes a circus. When in winter the pipes freeze and burst, you have to heat the pipes and so on. So this is how we face this minority issue in technology also, because all the technologies we get are tropical technologies from Delhi and Mumbai. And half the times these taps don't even work in New Delhi. So fat chances they'll work in high up in -20. Despite all this, we have not only survived, but a colorful culture and civilization has thrived. Very similar to yours in Bhutan. As I said, we are in two ends of the same spectrum, with our own language, literature, music, dance, and so on, and a life that is in harmony with nature. That's how Ladakh has been. But being a minority has been rather difficult in that, especially for children in schools, when you are a tiny minority, your language is disregarded and you get textbooks that are in the language of the region. So in our case, we used to have textbooks in Urdu, which is the language of Kashmir and now Pakistan and some parts of India. Ladakhis who couldn't speak any Urdu had to do their education in Urdu or English. And then the textbooks had no relevance to life at all. So you would be given textbooks that said A for apple, B for ball, fine, but F for fan in a -30 winter, a child has to learn F for fan. And when they ask the teacher, what is this contraption? The teacher says, I've never seen one, but I'm told it keeps you cool. And the children, their eyes pop out. Why would anybody want to be colder than we are? That explains why the school results were like what you see there. 0%, 95% of the students used to fail. So it was a disaster, the education system. That's when some of us started saying that we cannot accept this. We have to change it. I was in engineering college. I had to teach students to support my education. And while teaching students in 10th grade, I saw how bright they are, yet the system failed them. They didn't fail, the system failed them. And I thought more important is to address this loud cry of the children than become an engineer and go to, Silicon Valley or Bangalore or somewhere. So I came back to Ladakh as my friends were heading towards Silicon Valley. I came back to Ladakh and started a whole movement together with young people, mostly failures. And we moved the villages to take education as the top priority. And when people take education as top priority, the politicians give priority to issues like that. Only when people do. So democracy was used to give priority to education. At the same time, we changed all these F for fan textbooks to more relevant books that Ladakhi children can relate to. We retrained all the teachers to make it engaging education, not just a lecture from the textbook. And very soon, as was mentioned, the results started changing from consistent 5% to eventually 75%. Now, we said 25% are still failing, and that's not good. No one should come out with a stamp of failure on their forehead after spending their precious quarter of a life. So we said, why don't we teach them the way they learn if they don't learn the way we teach them? And for these failures, we started a very interesting school. And it is these innovations that I'm going to share today, what we did with the school of so-called failures. The others were regular government schools with limited innovation possible. But in this special school, we could do what we wanted to. And in this school, we focused on what I was explaining, the 3 H's. The bright head of the child, definitely, but also skilled hands and a kind heart. So with a batch of failures, so-called failures, we went to a patch of desert in the middle of nowhere on the bank of Indus and started a school that would be conceived and designed by or with the students, built by the students and run by the students. Our belief was that most of our young people are actually evolutionarily wired to learn from doing, not from reading. You know, reading is just a few thousand-year phenomena. And today's schools, which all focus on reading and writing, are just 300, 400 years old. But we humans have been here on this planet for hundreds of thousands, millions of years. We are more wired to learn by doing, learn by looking at our adults and doing it ourselves than by listening and reading and writing. So human beings, by evolution, are wired to learn by doing. As hunter-gatherers, we learn from our elders by accompanying them in the wild. At the risk of, death and all kinds of injuries, our young ones learned by doing. As farmers, when they settled 10,000 years ago, young ones learn from grown-ups by doing, not by sitting and listening to how you farm or how you hunt, but by doing. And therefore, my belief is that evolution also responded to this and packed the human young one with lot of energy, packed the human young one with lot of energy that was needed for learning by doing in the wild when you are hunting, on the fields when you are farming. You had a lot of energy that was needed in young ones. And our teenagers always bubble with energy. But today's education system shuts them into classrooms, makes them sit for hours and says, pin drop silence. You will listen, I will talk. Well, these young ones are not designed for that. They are designed to go out and do. That's what nature took millions of years to wire our children and gift them with so much energy. So now what happens when these bubbling energy packets are made to sit, then that nature's gift of energy comes out. It has to come out. Comes out in ugly ways, violent ways. That is now in the West called teenager rage, rebellion. In fact, my belief is that teenager rage and rebellion is nothing but a manifestation of our defective education system. I used to hear about teenager problems a lot in Ladakh, and I have never seen any such teenager problems in Ladakh, in the villages. Teenagers are actually respected as very responsible parts of the family. So I thought maybe this is some racial difference, maybe West has some problem, until I saw that Ladakh also developed and progressed, and our capital, Leh city, became like any of those cities. And then I started seeing teenager rebellion and rage and problems in Ladakhi children also. So it's not to do with race and ethnic issues, but it is how we handle the immense energy that human young ones have. And it definitely seems not by making them sit and listen. So therefore, in this school, we said, let them do the work. Let teachers only sit at the back. Let them do the work. Let them conceive the school. Let them build the school. Let them run the school. And let nature take over. They have all this energy of doing. Let them do. So at this patch of desert, in the next 5 years or so, the students did many workshops. This is part of the workshop of their conception of what the school should be. It was done by students in a workshop in '94. It's an original painting by them, where they can integrate all they learn in the textbooks, in geography, in physics, physics, gravity. How do we design our school so that most of the energy comes from gravity, water comes from top to bottom, no pumps, just gravity, or how the sun moves in the southern sky in winter. Geography teaches us, but our children only memorize that. In the northern hemisphere, the sun stays in the southern sky in winters. We don't make any use of it. So we made them apply that to make buildings that would be heated by the sun in a cold place like Ladakh. So applying all this theory from the text on the ground, they created their own school, I would say, with, of course, adult guidance and facilitation, but a lot by the students themselves, from design to building. So the schools, when built, was also to be run by the students. Now, teachers have a hard time managing teenagers and disciplining them, but here we say the students run the school. And to do that, we say that you run the school like a little country, because you have to go be prepared for the world outside. So the school is a little country and they are the citizens. So this little country has a little government and a little election system and a little election commission even, and a little parliament. So every 2 months, so that more students get a chance, every 2 months, they elect a little government. You can see them planning at the top, and they execute. They set goals and targets and execute during the 2 months. And at the end, they present it in the little parliament. So this way they learn how governance works, how civics or political science works, by experiencing it, by running it. And in the process, the school gets managed while they learn the theory of political science applied in their school itself. The little government that takes portfolios and responsibilities are not mock responsibilities, they are real responsibilities. So those who take care of dairy farms and Ministry of, say, animal husbandry or dairy, take care of all the cows. They milk the cows, they feed the cows, learn to take care of animals, and they would apply from the textbook, for example, the chapter on statistics, to track the productivity of the cow, how much milk on each day, and then make bar charts and histograms to see how the productivity rises or falls with the variations like climate, winter, summer, food, and so on. So they get to apply it to in life. Others take care of the solar cooking gadgets using the physics, learning the physics, applied physics from their textbooks. Yet others take charge of organic gardens which produce vegetables, but they are like entrepreneurs who produce the vegetables and then sell it to the campus kitchen at a selling price. Then they work backwards to find the cost price of a kg of the vegetables, and then practically learn that profit is equal to selling price minus cost price, not as a formula, but a life experience. Similarly, others take care of the power plant, the solar power plant, and greenhouses that produce vegetables, and learn relevant theory in the textbooks and see the application. So this campus is very interesting and contextual in that in a sunny place like Ladakh, almost all the sources of energy are the sun. So from cooking to greenhouses producing fresh greens in winter, to natural lighting in buildings, to any electricity needed from photovoltaics since the 90s when photovoltaics were not as common, to water heating, self-made water heaters, to water pumping. Everything is powered by the sun, including the cow sheds. The end, you can see our school cow sheds, where the cows stay warm at +12 when it is minus 20 outside. It was done out of empathy for the animals, but very soon we learned that the cows suitably reciprocated by giving double the milk. So our school cows are famous for giving twice more milk than others. And we learned biology through this. Can you guess the biology you would learn? Well, our biology lessons say there are warm-blooded animals and there are cold-blooded animals, and warm-blooded animals have to maintain a body temperature, a constant. In our case, and that of cows, it is +37. you have to maintain plus 37. A degree higher is fever and you could die. A degree lower is like hypothermia and you could die. You have to maintain. So imagine the poor cows who have to maintain their 300 kgs at 37 in minus 15. Where would the energy come? Nowhere else except their food. So all their food goes into keeping their bodies warm. Of course, there won't be much left for milk. And when you do that, but about keeping their bodies at 37 for warm-blooded animals, when you do that by cheaper sources like the solar heated cowshed, then their food becomes milk. So of course they give much more milk. So you could call it reciprocation or biology. And now we're hoping to promote it for the government to take up, solarizing all cowsheds for the good of the cows and for good of the human to have better income. So your biology chapters could actually change lives of cows and of their owners. So similarly at this school, we try to apply, for example, more complicated concepts like germ theory or microorganism or biotechnology as it becomes in useful things like preserving apricots, which have a shelf life of 2 weeks for 2 years by sterilizing, understanding germ theory, and it works. Our campus makes its own fruit preservation and they stock it for the whole year, thanks to the biology lesson. Now, it doesn't end here. Some of these students fall in love with these experiences and they choose it as their career. So some of these students have become entrepreneurs in these fields that takes care of livelihood. So those who were really interested in fruit preservation with biotechnology or germ theory have become pulp producers, jam and juice suppliers for many industries in India. Others who are taking care of visitors have become travel entrepreneurs, like this all women's travel company that has bagged many awards and internationally talked about and got the President's Award last year. So all such things come out from these experiences at the school. Now, towards the end, I will share with you some people in Ladakh, young people who are somewhat like influencers or stars that other young people follow. So this is Thewang Rigzin. He became the Minister for Education at 27 in Ladakh. This is Tanzin. He became a globally well-known documentary filmmaker, winning awards on almost all the continents. And this is Thinless, who is an award-winning entrepreneur. Now, if I ask you to guess what is common among them, most people say maybe they have been to elite schools that gave them such opportunities, or they are, children of well-off people or learned people and so on. But no, actually, the thing that is common among them is failure. Failure is what they had in common. And that's why they got entry in this school that I just mentioned very easily. For Rigzin, who had failed 5 times, there was almost a red carpet, as you can imagine. Somebody who has failed 5 times for a school where the admission criteria is failure rather than marks and distinctions. So that is what this school is known for. You are more accepted if you have failed, and you could be on a standby waiting list if you have done really well in your exams. That's actually to give opportunity to those who cannot go anywhere else, actually. So similarly, Stanzin failed 4 times. So what I'm trying to say is, if given the right environment of engaging learning, then even failures can shine like bright stars. So you can imagine what stars can do otherwise. I'll keep it here. If you have time, I have some more slides, but I'll keep it here for your questions and then take it forward if we have any time. So thank you for your patience.
My question is, how do you bring this teaching into your classrooms in Ladakh? Here in Bhutan, we have been trying, but we still feel that there's a lot of gap between the so-called modern education and then the traditional education. That's our monk body. So how do we bring these two together? And what are some of your experiences from Ladakh? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we don't bring it as a religion so much, but as a value system that you could practice. So we emphasize on empathy, the kind heart part, which is what Buddhism is mostly about. You can call it Buddhism or not, but an empathetic kind heart is what it aims to. So Buddha will be more pleased with empathetic people than just names and claims about, being Buddhist. So we try to emphasize that, irrespective of which religion the children may come from. It's about, introspection, seeing inwards and looking at how your actions may affect others during the day. So we bring it in those more subtle ways than a chapter in a textbook or so. Well, we do take chapters that are there, but we don't introduce it as a subject or chapter or so, but rather try to live the values. And that's what to me is most important. Thank you.
Going by your presentation, you were mostly talking on the experiential learning. But on the other side, we would also like to know how you balance between experiential learning and the reading and writing that you would have, because going by the results are so escalating. So during examination time, I think you have both. So how do you balance between these two? Thank you.
You're very right. In the current system, it's very, very difficult because the current system only examines the head part. It does not examine the hands part or the experiential part. It does not care whether the child knows how to do things as long as they can say that. I'll give you an example. Suppose the lesson was about making tea. So the chapter on tea making says, first boil the water, then put tea leaves, then sugar, and finally add milk, and the tea is ready. So our current system would give 10 on 10 to the student who writes a perfect first boil water, then put tea leaves, then add sugar, and finally milk, and the tea is ready. Whoever writes that will get 10 on 10. But if a student does not write it correctly, but can make a beautiful cup of tea, it doesn't understand that. It will say, you fail, you get 0, you didn't write it well. So that's the state of our schools. And this should change. Rather than schools and the students, the examination system should change. When I go to these institutes like IITs, okay, I hope you know IITs are very, respected, regarded in India. The professors are rather frustrated, not as happy as the name sounds. They tell me what to do, Mr. Wangchuk. The students today are not even interested in what we teach in the classrooms. They are just interested in the degree from IIT, not interested in engineering. And I say, it's not their fault. It's your fault. I have sympathies with these students who were never meant to be great engineers, who just cracked the artificial way of, memorizing physics, memorizing mathematics and technology and got into your IIT. They are not the people who are passionate engineers inside them. For that, you will have to change the entrance and the examination, because right now your examination only has multiple choice questions where you just tick, 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 and you get 99 out of 100 and you get into the IIT. That anybody can fake, sham, and do it. But if your examination had even one question where it was not multiple choice, but where the student had to make something or break something, assemble something or disassemble something, then only those who have done that, who have been passionate about that, would get a chance, and you would get the right kind of students. So they say, well, we have so many students applying, how can we have the time to do such a question and then check the answers? So I say, you don't have to make every student have a question on that. You even make it random. You know, one in every 100 students will get a practical making and unmaking or something that proves their track record of interest in innovation, in engineering, and so on. Then everybody will prepare just for the chance that they get that question, you know, and if they get and not prepared, then they would lose. So therefore, everybody will prepare. And if it takes experience and actually opening a clock, for example, or a refrigerator and putting it back together to get into an IIT, then the schools will start doing it, because now they know this can mean more of my students get into the IIT. So the schools will start doing it. Parents who right now shout at children who open a clock, you know, children are so curious. They're great, wonderful. They would open anything and the parents are shouting at them, why did you break this? This is what it takes to become an engineer. So suddenly, if you have the entrance exams changed, parents will not only not scold them, but will bring 2 more clocks to be broken. Please open it, please put it together. You might get into the IIT. So you have to change where it takes change. You have to change it at the examination level, then the schools will change, then the parents will change, even coaching tuition centers, which there are many in India, will start doing this, you know, experiential, make it, break it, do it kind of education if it had, you know, results. So it has to have teeth. Right now, experiential education has no value, so nobody cares, from parents to schools to the whole system. Sorry, it was a lengthy answer, but that's what I think.
I'm pretty sure that journey for you may not have been so easy. There must have been so many ups and downs. When it comes in terms of the achievement, it is quite clear for us, and it is very enriching. But could you share some of the most difficult times in your life, in your journey to come to this extent? This is question number one. And if you permit me, I would like to have one more. When it comes in terms of, at one point of time, I have heard you in one of the television channel appreciating the Bhutanese education system. And thereby, I'm coming to realize that the Bhutanese education system is not unknown to you. So considering that, I would like to request the innovator, the educationist, to give us few recommendations. But at the same time, we would also like to apprise here that we may not be able to do to the extent that is being achieved by your initiative, but what we can do right away in next couple of months of time, so that that becomes the basis to give a kickoff to the innovative education system for our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, yes, challenges, a lot of them, lot of challenges, particularly in the, you know, Indian system, where it's not easy to change the government system, to work with the government system and bring changes is not very easy. A. B. Without the parents and social awakening and awareness, new things are difficult to digest. So when the society is not prepared and you are pushing for something unseen and avant-garde, as they say, ahead of the times, then people don't understand, and worse still, they misunderstand. And then you would have maybe from the parents of the children themselves or teachers who would think this is too much work. Why are they changing things? Nobody likes change. So we have had our share of resistance from teachers, from bureaucrats, not so much from parents, because in Ladakh, parents were always, totally surprised that so much talk about education and what we see coming out of the schools are really what I would like to call handicapped in the literal sense. I don't think handicapped are those who are, physically challenged, but handicapped because their heads have grown in maybe some knowledge and lot of arrogance, but their hands are like less capable than their uneducated, unschooled parents and grandparents. So they come out handicapped. Therefore, the parents were relieved to hear that education would be about hands and heart, but the system was somewhat disturbed. We have heard about this kind of education the British gave us, and New Delhi speaks about it. What is this nonsense this young lad is speaking about? Still, we have a lot of problems in changing the system, So when it comes to scaling up, we are way behind Bhutan. What I was sharing was a school where we could experiment. There we can do what we think and we can create, but it may take decades for the system to accept it. It is much more easy for a little country like Bhutan to understand and change and adapt the systems and become a beacon of light for the world. So there I would say, as you asked your second question, Bhutan stands better chances to, as a little country of cohesive policies and governance, to adopt changes. And when you do it in one place, it would be easier even for India to see that, okay, one country has done and we can do. So for me, I would say it would be easier for me if a country like Bhutan did it, and then the example came back to India that, okay, if they can do, we can also do. Otherwise, my philosophies and theories look too unreal and not in line with the conventional Western or British legacy that we have. So it is often difficult to digest. And therefore, I think Bhutan is doing very well. I respect the initiatives and accomplishments in education in a very short time, highly, as far as Bhutan is concerned. And I think you have, therefore, a responsibility as a little country to adapt and make such experiments and show to the world that things are possible to change. All large countries have an extra challenge when it comes to change. There's too much of noise and cacophony to agree on change. So I think Bhutan has a great potential to understand, evaluate, and implement what feels right, even if it doesn't come from the British or the Western world. That's what I would say about the possibilities when it comes to Bhutan.
My question here would be with regard to support systems that are required of in a school. Basically, I'm talking about the teachers, and I would like to know what you have to say with regard to an experiential school and the number of teachers that would be required in the school, or the support mechanisms and the support staff that would be required. So there,
Thank you.
so regard to the students and the teachers, in an experiential school, would it require more teachers, more support staff, or would it require less? So if you could share some light on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Before coming to your question, I think I forgot to answer the last question where I was asked, what could Bhutan do in the coming times? So like I said, it would be easier for Bhutan to change its, for example, examination system to include some level of practical application validation, you know, whether it comes in various ways. It could be a random by lots, you know, question. Like I said, every 100 student gets something to do or make or break or something. It could be that you could adopt, or have some, you know, track record of solving problems, innovation when it comes to the sciences, engineering, etc., from their village system that vouches for a student who has done such things in the past. Something should be there to vouch for their experiential oriented approach to education. So in short, I'm saying there should be some changes in the examination system which gives value to experiences and not just answers on paper. Similarly, I think one way to go forward, coming to this present question and connecting with the past one, is maybe you could lead in making schools less and less lecture-based and more action-based, and outsourcing lectures to various digital platforms. So what you are doing now in schools is, you know, the physics lecture and the maths lecture and so on. You have so many people to do the lectures, but there are much better lectures on various digital platforms. So why duplicate? Give the platforms the outsourcing of the lectures, and as I said, make the schools the happening place. Then I think you would have lesser staff needed, because you have outsourced half of it to digital platforms which are there for a fraction of the cost. Once done, it will stay there. It could be a Bhutanese version of, you know, Khan Academy or Byju's as in India, but not with a commercial intention like many companies do. Maybe it is more compassionate, you know, a system where all kinds of lectures are in a library of online videos with the best of 3D illustrations that you can get from around the world. So that could solve the problem of lectures. And I can guarantee you these lectures will have better and more lasting impact than our teachers' lecture, because our teachers may not be the best communicators. Face it. Why don't we make them into doers, which they can easily do? So make our teachers into doers and facilitators who help children work in collaborative groups and get objectives accomplished. These are more possible with the number of staff we have. I think the support and the staff will either remain the same or reduce, because now a major part of what we were doing is done by digital platforms. So much so that I would say if we are to do the same lecture, chalk and talk, then our staff need not be there even. We can close the schools and students can watch videos on digital platforms. So it can completely be taken over by that. Rather than closing, what I was saying was to adapt it to what is actually needed and what was completely missing in the past. So these schools become where children become doers and not just, listener and writers. So yes, the approach will need to change. We'll have to have a system that values learning by doing and experiential learning. And when it is such a big proportion of the school's role, then of course examinations will also adapt to factor that. And then beyond that, as I said, the kind heart part, the empathy part, schools could have projects where students do not only talk and work about competing and, cutthroat competition, as they say, but rather cooperating and going out to villages to solve various issues in the villages. I'll just give you an example how empathy not only makes them good human beings, but actually solves huge problems of the society. So in our school, we did an experiment. Many villages have very bad dental hygiene. Maybe in your case also, bad dental hygiene. And currently, the solution is doctors or dentists. And most of the times it ends up in pulling a tooth out. The dentist doesn't give them health, but rather denticaps them from handicap to denticap. So that's not a solution. We said, why not have a workshop for our children? Our children are 16 years old as they fail in 10th grade. Why don't we have a workshop on dental hygiene for our students so they learn dental hygiene, but not stop there? Then make them, their project is that they go into the villages and have dental hygiene campaign in the villages, so that they would sing about dental hygiene, they would demonstrate how you brush, how do you keep your teeth healthy. And finally, what happens, I'll tell you, is that these little kids, these little failures are actually more effective than dentists, because dentists can only pull the teeth out. These little kids can give health so that they never have to get the tooth pulled. So actually these students can be better ambassadors of health than your doctors and dentists, and they become true experientially learned people when it comes to dental hygiene. So empathy for other people who are suffering decayed, rotten teeth takes them there, and they do their job well, and in the process they get nature's blessings and become very good at this subject. Their own teeth stay healthy, their families, and some of them may go on to become dentists. So why not attach every learning to some social project that the students may do? This will give them true learning and solve a lot of challenges that the government otherwise finds it difficult to solve by paying salaries and so much. So many dentists could be saved. Dentist salaries could be saved if every school was on a dental hygiene campaign when it came to the chapter on dental hygiene in your biology lessons. Something like that.
My question here is, starting from 1994 till date, they have done so much reform in the Ladakh, and then still, if you when you look back, do you think that you need further reforms in the system that you have already done? That's my first question.
Oh, completely. As I said, we are not as good in a large country in changing the huge government system. What you saw was mostly from our experimental school. To apply it, to mainstream it, is a bigger challenge and will take much more effort. So yes, a lot of work left actually. Okay, I'll share some other innovations, experiments at this school that can change lives. So in our school, we try to apply, as was said, and innovate in contextual themes that are meaningful for the region. So we say we play with earth, sun, ice, and fire in a cold place like Ladakh. So with earth or mud, soil, we build all our buildings. This is nothing new, not thanks to us, it's our ancestors. As in Bhutan, we build kyang or gyapak, rammed earth, as you say. You can see there, people ramming earth. So we thought this is beautiful, why change it? You know, just to be modern, you don't have to throw everything that is great. So therefore we kept what was great from the past, but added what was missing in the past. And in the past, the missing thing was the heating part, because they did not have glass. So not much solar heating could be done. Now in 9th grade science, the chapter on heat sometimes only bothers the children to memorize the concepts like conduction, convection, radiation, but it can actually change lives. So in the bottom, you can see how the chapter on heat comes alive at this school. Conduction, convection, radiation are more than just concepts to memorize for the examination. So in this building where they study, you can see there the building has a transparent film in front, a greenhouse. So what happens is that when the sun shines, the greenhouse gets hot, and hot air is lighter, therefore rises. This is convection from the physics chapter. And lighter air goes into the house from the upper story, loses its heat to the walls, becomes cold itself, and therefore dense, and is pushed into the greenhouse. And this cycle continues all day without any fans or motors or ventilators, just natural convection, free of cost. Your heat from the sun is getting into the house. Chapter on heat. Now conduction. Conduction brings the heat from the outer wall of the south side, molecule by molecule, particle by particle, slowly to the inside, and it reaches inside at midnight when it is actually cold, not in the day when it is not so cold. And when you close the windows at night, the walls are so warm from convection and conduction that it starts radiating heat. So you have convection, conduction, radiation doing their job to keep you warm and actually change lives. So at this school, thanks to the chapter on this, the students get involved in applying that and building the classrooms. And you have buildings that stay at average plus 18 nowadays with the newer buildings, even when it is minus 20 outside. So this is the magic of your chapter on heat in the science subject. And using geography, you design the buildings and orient it in such a way that the summer sun, which is overhead, does not enter the glass. Only winter sun, which is from the southern sky, thanks to geography we know, enters the building and heats it. So the buildings are actually the coolest buildings in summer, these buildings, and the warmest in winter, thanks to geography and science and creative application. So interdisciplinary. Now it comes to earth buildings, we hardly have anybody who could teach. They're all gone and people went for cement. So we said, why not learn from ancestors? Ancestors are not alive, but their work is alive. So for example, this fort in a village called Saspol stands 4 stories tall, in spite of all the elements of sun and rain and snow, 4 stories tall. People have plundered the wood, which is very precious in a desert. They've taken all the wood, yet the building stands. Must have something right in this building. And we recently carbon dated and found that it is 1500 years old. So learning from our ancestors, we took samples from this building, even if they are breaking, but to last so long, something definitely was right. In the laboratories, we analyzed and learned what our ancestors did to mix various soils, how much of clay, how much of silt and sand and gravel to get such strong walls. And then we can make it into knowledge that is transferred to the next generation. So an ancient wisdom can be resurrected and passed on to the next. Now that could be education also. We don't have to get it from New Delhi or New York or London each time. We can create our own knowledge that helps our own people get, beautiful houses with a material like soil, which is abundant right under our feet and heated by an energy source which is abundant, free for all, rich and poor, right above our head, which is the sun. So that's how you can, learn from the past and pass it on to the next generation. So learning from these, both our ancestors and our textbooks and modern science, you get buildings like the one in the background, which is, I would say, beyond modern. It's not modern, it is beyond modern, because modern would be buildings that stay at +22 in -22, like in New York, but at a huge cost to the environment, guzzling oil or nuclear energy. And here are these buildings that do the same, or even better, actually, with no harm to anybody, any being, not to the planet. So that's the kind of development we would like to see. And in the foreground, you see students learning to use animals for farming. And we think this is a beautiful system because these animals eat what is the waste of the farm. So the waste of the farm is their food, and waste of the animals is the food of the plants. It becomes manure. What a beautiful cycle. Instead, nowadays we promote only tractors. Tractors don't give anything nice like dung that becomes manure for the farms. It only gives carbon dioxide, which is killing us. And it only takes fuel, fossil fuel, which is not easy, cheap. It makes us dependent on other countries. And farmers have to take loans. And when they can't repay in India, many commit suicide. Why get into that trap when you can live a healthy life with nature? So that's the kind of life we try to promote. And again, from these solar buildings emerge entrepreneurs also. So like the jam makers and the travel companies, we have builders, startups who can build you a solar heated mud building at a telephone call. So it gives them great creative livelihoods and it solves the problems of the people. So I'll just quickly go through these. Like the problem of cold winters, there was the problem of climate change and water shortage, for which we applied some physics and some geometry to make what we call ice stupas or artificial glaciers. So in Ladakh, we don't have a lot of resources like electricity and a lot of money, but we have gravity. Mountains have all gravity, and gravity is a resource. So you always have an upstream and a downstream. So we said, why not make ice in shapes that last through the summer and give water when the farmers need water. In winter, there is water wasted because nobody farms in winter. There's still water in the streams, but they don't last till summer. So all the snow and ice is gone. So we said, why not? All the flat ice and snow is gone. So we said, why not make it in conical shape that will last longer? And this we got from middle school geometry. In geometry, we have shapes like spheres, hemispheres, and cones, which have low surface area for the volume. Low surface area protects it from the sun, which melts it otherwise. And volume is what farmers are looking for. So we said, use a pipe upstream and bring it downstream. And primary school science says water always maintains its level. You don't need a pump, just gravity, upstream and downstream, and water wants to go to the level of the inlet. And therefore, you have a natural fountain spraying water in the air, in the -20 air, this water sprays, and there the water loses its heat. And if you remember your high school physics, it's the latent heat, which keeps it, liquid. When latent heat is lost, it becomes solid, ice. It gives us a lot of problems in exams, but it can be useful also, latent heat. So you get these. This one was 6 stories tall ice and contained 1 million liters of water. So this stayed till July from the winter. Unlike all other ice, because of geometry of surface area and volume, these conical ice stupas last till June, and we started making bigger and bigger. The first one contained 1 million liter. This one was 3 million liter, 30 lakh liters. And as they melt, they shed their water. And with the melting water, you can use drip irrigation to plant trees in a desert that has never seen greenery otherwise. And now it has become somewhat like a movement in villages. And this one that you see in the foreground is one of the biggest. It's half the height of the Qutub Minar and contains 70 lakh liters. And various other villages in India and in other countries like Switzerland, Czech Republic, they're doing similar things, sometimes for fun, tourism, and water. In Ladakh, people get creative and they start making tourism from ice stupas. So you have ice stupa cafes, you have ice climbing, and in a way, the cost of preserving water is subsidized by tourism. This got us the Rolex Award, which was a handsome sum of money, which we used to raise more funds and start a contextual university. So far you saw about the school, the alternative school. Now we are making an alternative university where older youth, or young adults could also apply what they learn in life and solve various problems. And that happens to be our current project. And it has been now 2.5 years, and I'm connecting to you from this university, this alternative university called Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, where we have young people engage in all these things that I shared. I'll not take more time, but rather I'll share a link with you so you can share among yourselves about this university part, and I'll end it here. Thank you very much.